Hello, kiddies. The Crypt Keeper's in the house with a groove that's nasty and mean, like the effects of a guillotine. A permanent headache's the end of the mission, because you have entered the Keeper's terror-vision. Hello, creeps. Welcome to TerraCon 2017. So glad to be a part of your nightmares. Please, come check out your favorite celebrities. They're dying to meet you. Come by for an autograph or just to say hi. Hello. And don't forget, there are all kinds of vendors here with some of your favorite swag. Some of it creepy, some of it Mommy won't appreciate you bringing home. There's nothing general about a story. Stories are very specific, and to tell a story well, you have to be very specific in the way you tell that story. Where it takes place changes everything. Who the people are and the circumstance changes everything. The time of day changes everything about it. So, anatomy of a story has to do with the story you want to tell and the details involved in telling that story.
I love live theater. I like movies, of course, but because I'm in the movie business and have been for so many years, you get rather critical and blasé because you know what's going on behind the scenes. So it has to be a damn good story for me to get involved.
I have co-written a play called An Iliad, which is about Homer's Iliad, the story of the Trojan War, and in it I play Homer. It's about an hour and a half long. And he's a storyteller. And I basically tell one of the greatest stories ever told, which is the Trojan War. And I play Achilles, Hector, Cassandra, Priam, Paris, Astyanax, Andromache, Athena, Zeus. And people always come away from it going, wow, the story was so great, I actually saw it in my head. So the idea about storytelling is that what lives in people's imagination is as powerful as any image in front of their eyes. And the best storytelling is that which explodes your brain in a way, And when you see a movie that is all substance and no content, you feel cheated. When you see a movie where the story is compelling, you feel satisfied.
In film, it's a collaborative art, so hopefully you try to tell the story that the director is telling. In the theater, a writer has written a script and the director is interpreting it, but ultimately the actors are out on stage telling that story. And so it has to resonate with them that way. It's a little different kind of medium. Television, a lot of times they make television trying to appeal to as many people as possible. So the story might be a little more general, which may make it more universal, but not necessarily better. Tales from the Crypt were morality stories, so everybody had a lesson to learn from their actions and got their due process in the end.
I'm picking up my prints that I just got signed by Sid Haig, and I'm going to go meet the man in a minute, hopefully. Really appreciate your work. I'm honored to have got to do this piece with you.
All right,
so
fantastic.
Thank you.
It was fun bringing this nightmare to life. Okay, I mean, what better deal? Kick the shit out of people and get paid. Come on. There's a lot of good horror out there, and there's a lot of bad horror out there. Okay, just because you own a camera doesn't mean that you know how to make a movie. Okay. But there's a lot of good stuff out there, and I'm happy to see it going, because it's a great genre.
From my experience, and I've been doing films for 40 years now, from my experience, the people that play the most horrible, terrible characters in horror films are the people that are nice. And the people that are the comedians and the ones you want to love in films turn out to be the assholes. So you tell me which is better, to portray a character that's bad and then be nice in real life. I would prefer that.
I consciously entered the movie business, that was my career choice. So for it to pan out as it has, it's been a wonderful thing. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I can tell you almost in chronological order what science fiction, fantasy, and horror movies tweaked my brain, man. Going way back. And you're not going to believe this, but the original Invaders from Mars, probably in by the time it came to the 19-inch black and white television that we had, it was probably about, I don't know, I was 5 or 6 years old, so it was about 1960 or something like that, right? The costumes were so bad that you could almost see the zippers, on the costumes. But when I'm a little 6-year, 7-year-old kid, that freaked me out, man. Them big old monsters walking through the thing, and I had to ask my mom to turn off the TV.
Horror has always been really, really great and kind of showing you what's going on at different points in history, at least in my lifetime. During the women's movement, there were a lot of movies made where the woman would be, the Jamie Lee Curtis would be the last one left, and she was emancipated and trying to kill the bad guy and that kind of thing. During the time when the Cold War and nuclear weapons, there were a lot of sci-fi type horror happening. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and this kind of thing. A lot of it ran more into the sci-fi genre than the horror genre. Now, of course, the apocalypse always has seemed upon us as things have grown, so it makes sense that zombies are popular. The Crypt Keeper's a zombie himself.
Nightmare on Elm Street was perfect because you go to bed at night and it's like you can hear the knives, you can feel all of that. Even though when and then you go back and look at it later and you can see that last shot and it's like a plastic dog getting pulled through the hole. It's like, it's funny now, but it scared the hell out of me then. Dude, he came to your house?
No, that was at a
No, you know what? Just tell people they came to your house and cut up your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pillow. That is pretty sick. All right. That would give me nightmares.
Fast forward. You ever heard of a movie called Night of the Living Dead? The one by George Romero in black and white. I went to see that at the movie house, okay? I'm originally from Pennsylvania. And as the zombie outbreak spread, it got closer and closer to my home. And I was like looking over my shoulder. I was checking out the door at the theater, making sure. Okay.
Our executive producer and director, Greg Nicotero, he started off with, Romero way back. It just keeps spreading. So this is like the Walking Dead is literally, it's like a child of that whole genre, that he started with Night of the Living Dead.
The sort of $1 million question is, why are we attracted to horror? I think as humans we love to feel. You love to be forced into, shocked into an emotion. They have horror. We had haunted houses back east in New Jersey, like 365 days a year. There are these, there are amusement parks that are haunted houses. It's not just like Halloween. So there's something in us that likes to be scared.
It's because we need to use our adrenal glands. Okay? It's like if you don't use it, you lose it. All right? That's why people go to horror films. That's why they go to wild roller coaster rides, stuff like that, to get the juices going. And so that's my job. People give me money and say, go scare those people, and then I do.
We all like that thrill of fear. Because it was instinctive in us from the word go. It's how we evolved, is that ability to feel fear and react to it. But these days we live in such a safe world, we don't really need fear. We like to feel fear in a very safe environment. And I think also in a cinema environment, that's why you like to feel fear. You like those jump moments in a cinema where everybody's jumping around you as well, because then you have that inclusive feeling of being part of a society that's reacting to something together.
The whole idea of the unknown, whether or not the fourth dimension, the whole notion that maybe things could actually be for real and actually exist. The idea of dark, darkness, people are afraid of the dark. The fear factor is always going to be with us, and I think people can capitalize on that in films.
Yeah, I've always been a horror fan. I grew up Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, all the Chainsaw movies and Freddy and Michael. I mean, it's like I grew up with that. So for me, this is just like an extension of everything that I grew up with. But in defense of that, I would say that, The Walking Dead is more about the family. It's more about finding family in this post-apocalypse. What does family mean to you? How would you rebuild if you had a chance to rebuild again? Would you make the same mistakes that are being made right now that may or may not have led up to that point? So for me, it's really not about the zombies. It's not about the walkers and the Walking Dead. It's about the humans that are still alive.
Yeah, I was just at Greg Nicotero's rewatching Night of the Living Dead, and it's like that's not just a good horror movie. It's just a great movie. You know what I mean? And when you can do that with just images, you don't even explain it, because it's not about being explained. If something like that happens, it just happens to you, and you have to deal with it. Everybody's not, talking about, so I wonder how these zombies came alive. Nobody cares. They just tried to stay alive, And that's the thing about a horror movie, is that it's your basis instinct. We get back to our basis instinct of we just got to survive this somehow.
And then the next one that really hit me hard was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. Came out of the theater after watching that thing, going, whoa, what did I just see, man? And then, to actually be a part of that franchise, wow.
I don't like things that jump out at me, okay? Like one time I was just walking through the yard and all of a sudden a mouse jumped up and tried to bite my leg. I went, what the f-? Boom, slapped the shit out of it.
I think, I still have, it's kind of, I don't know, an irrational fear of deep waters, oceans, stuff where you can't really see and out of your element. And something else can swim 30 miles an hour and, smell you miles away, and you're down in the dark and you can't really see it. It's cold, there's this whole not being able to breathe and having to rely on some apparatus if that goes wrong. And then a moray eel comes out of nowhere, grabs you by the ankle, starts pulling you further down. How do you get away from that? Is it like a dog where you hit it in the nose and it lets go of its grip? I don't know. Can I fend off a shark attack? So I think, I'm not sure, go for the eyes.
I've had some serious therapy since over the years. This is 30 years now since we've done Hellraiser, and my first therapist I killed, but it wasn't very fulfilling. So the next therapist, I realized eventually that I needed to connect to Clive's vision. We went to a boatyard because the therapist thought that water was connecting, and we went to a boatyard, and I actually was trying to get him there because of the chains, and I got a buoy, that you get from the boats, and I chained up my therapist, and then we took him out to sea. I say we, I mean it's obviously me and Butterball and the other voices that are in my head.
You have the physical experience of being in the makeup. You have the physical experience of being covered in latex, really unable to move. Your head, I couldn't move my head, I could judge my teeth, but I really couldn't turn my head from side to side. So you're just concentrating, and you're having to listen so hard and just really concentrate. And there's a lot to do with body memory, because you're having to hit a mark, which you've probably just done once or twice. You may have just said, okay, Nick, this is what you need to do. Walk 3 places, chatter your teeth, lift your hand up. Ashley's going to open her mouth, you put your hand in. I don't know where she is. Okay, so I put my hand on the back of Ashley's head. So you're concentrating purely on the job of acting and just making sure that, you're not letting anybody down. So it's not really until you actually get to see the film that you really understand what Hellraiser is about from the actor's perspective. And I was just kind of blown away by it.
It was a very different job for me, because I was at the time working as a TV presenter. And I think it was because I had mime training, and mimes are they're taught to stillness rather than movement. I've done both, but I think that's one of the reasons why, because this part is all about presence. and to be as ominous as you possibly can be. But when the makeup was designed around I had to do a head cast and do all that kind of thing. The costume and stuff. So it was when looking in the mirror, and first I said to myself, where's me? Where's Barbie? I was the big-haired TV presenter, it's the 80s. And then I saw the power of that image, and it's like, and some people saying, wow, it's so interesting seeing a female monster who is so sinister and ominous and stuff, and I've never thought about it that way, but of course it was quite unusual, so typical of Clive. In my book, The Voices of the Damned, I've written a story about a female Cenobite who decides she doesn't want to be second banana to the lead Cenobite anymore, and so she does a rebellion of the female Cenobites, and all hell breaks loose.
There's some very imaginative horror movies. I like psychologically horror movies, like The Exorcist or something like that. Rosemary's Baby, that was one of my favorite. I like horror films like that, Clockwork Orange, I guess, if you can call it a horror film. Although when we were doing it, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I had no idea it would be classed as a horror movie.
Horror is alive and well. One of the other things I love about horror is the fact that they do so much with practical effects as opposed to all the, the CGI and the artificial computer effects that everybody is doing. So that's kind of a cool thing.
Not only do you have horror, you've got horror comedy, horror sci-fi. You're mixing and matching these different genres with horror, things like iZombie and what have you, to expand it even more. One of the appeals of horror is the whole being able to dress up nature of it, particularly at conventions. You can do lots of things with different levels of the decay from cuts or bites. You can do different things with blood. You can do different things with melted faces from burns and, needles in the head, all that kind of stuff. And it's like an extension of being able to dress up as kids, So I think there's a little bit of that makes it a larger appeal generationally.
Well, this thing put me on the map. It's amazing that this mask itself is probably not much less strong than the one I wore. It's a flimsy mask, but the one I wore in the movies was flimsy. See, you can almost break this. Or maybe you can't. But it's not real strong. But it's put me on the map, man. I can't complain about that.
I was offered a movie years ago where I was playing a rich sadist who kills people, and I said no because I don't understand mindless cruelty. American Horror Story, the characters have depth, they have background, and they have, more importantly, a reason for action. So as long as a character has a reason for action, they have an articulated philosophy, I'm good. If it's just wanton cruelty, I'm not into it because I don't think it's enriching, and I don't think it furthers the conversation.
In the case of Tales from the Crypt, we had no idea that kids were attracted to it. Of course, it makes sense that a puppet was your host, and he would tell you it's okay for you to come have a good time, to be scared, in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. And it's a classic because it did that well. Every week, even though it was a different story, directed by a different director, had a different tone to it and that kind of thing, you still felt like you were watching Tales from the Crypt.
Without the fans, of course, we wouldn't be anywhere. But of course, they need us as much as we need them. So it's a mutual respect. And but I do like to give a little bit back so they can meet you in person and realize that you're not like the people that you play.
Well, I want to know who was giving you shit for liking horror, because they need to be slapped upside the head. I'm a lot older than you, brother, and I've been a lifelong horror fan too.